The Meerling Conspiracy, the death of an empire. The history of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is a tapestry of gold, blood, and secrets. But among all its tragedies, none is more chilling than what occurred on the morning of January 30th, 1889, deep in the snowy woods of the Vienna woods, at a modest hunting lodge called Meerling. A discovery was made that would shake the foundations of Europe. Crown Prince Rudolf, the only son of Emperor Franz Joseph and the legendary Empress Sissi, was found dead. Beside him lay the body of his 17-year-old mistress, Baroness Mary Vetsera. The official story told to the world was one of a tragic suicide pactus, lovers who chose death over separation. But as the decades passed and the archives began to leak, a much darker reality emerged. This was not a romantic tragedy. It was a scene of brutal violence, political assassination, and a cover-up that reached the very top of the imperial throne. To understand Meerling, we must look beyond the myth of the lovers and into the cold, calculated world of imperial power. Rudolf was not a typical prince. He was brilliant, sensitive, and dangerously progressive. In a court defined by rigid tradition and absolute conservatism, Rudolf was a rebel. He wrote anonymous articles for liberal newspapers, criticizing his father's government and dreaming of a democratic future for the empire. He was a man trapped between two worlds: the ancient glory of the Habsburgs and the rising tide of 20th century revolution. This internal conflict made him a target. The Imperial secret police watched his every move. His father, the emperor, looked at his own son with suspicion and disappointment. Rudolf was isolated, lonely, and increasingly desperate. He began to seek escape in the dark corners of Vienna, where he met Mary Vetsera, a young, ambitious girl who was obsessed with the handsome, tortured prince. Mary Vetsera was not the only woman in Rudolf's life, but she was the one he chose for his final act. At 17, she was a dreamer, intoxicated by the drama of high society. Rudolf, meanwhile, was a man falling apart. He was suffering from ill health, haunted by political failures, and terrified of the future. He began to speak of death to his friends, even asking other women to join him in his suicide pact. They all refused, laughing it off as a dark joke. But Mary Vetsera did not laugh. She saw it as the ultimate romantic gesture. In January 1889, Rudolf managed to slip away from the palace and head to Meerling, his private hunting lodge. Mary followed him in secret. What happened behind those locked doors for the next 48 hours is a matter of intense debate. But the physical evidence left behind tells a story that contradicts the suicide theory. When the bodies were found, the room was a nightmare. Rudolf was sitting on the edge of the bed, slumped forward. Mary was lying on the bed, covered in roses. The initial report stated that Mary had poisoned Rudolf and then herself. Then it was changed to say Rudolf had shot Mary and then himself. But the inconsistencies were impossible to ignore. Mary's body showed signs of a struggle. There were bruises on her arms and neck. More shockingly, a later examination of her skull revealed that she had not died from a self-inflicted gunshot, but from a massive blow to the head, likely from a heavy object. As for Rudolf, his hands were mutilated. His right hand, the one he supposedly used to fire the gun, was hacked and bruised, as if he had been defending himself in a desperate fight. The emperor's reaction was immediate and cold. He ordered the room to be scrubbed clean. He demanded that all evidence of Mary Vetsera's presence be erased. Her body was taken away in the middle of the night, propped up in a carriage with a broomstick to make it look like she was alive, and buried in a nameless grave. The emperor then forced the Vatican to grant Rudolf a Christian burial by claiming he was of unsound mind. The message was clear. The world must believe it was a suicide of a madman. Anything else, an assassination or a failed political coup, would have started a war. But why would anyone want to kill the crown prince? Rudolf was in contact with Hungarian rebels and French agents. He was plotting to take the throne from his father to save the empire from what he saw as inevitable destruction. He was a threat to the pro-German alliance that his father cherished. Some historians believe that the German Secret Service, or even the emperor's own agents, discovered the plot and decided that Rudolf had to be eliminated. The hunting lodge at Meerling was the perfect place for a quiet execution. The suicide pact was the perfect cover story. It turned a political execution into a scandalous romance, ensuring that the public would focus on the girl and the bed rather than the papers and the politics. Empress Elisabeth, the famous Sissi, never recovered. She wore black for the rest of her life, wandering Europe like a ghost, haunted by the memory of the son she couldn't save. She believed, until her dying day, that Rudolf had been murdered. The tragedy of Merling didn't just end 2 lives. It ended the future of the Habsburg dynasty. Without Rudolf, the throne passed to his cousin, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. We know how that story ended. His assassination in Sarajevo triggered the First World War and the total collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The blood spilled at Merling was the first leak in a dam that would eventually break and drown all of Europe. Today, Merling is a quiet convent, but the air still feels heavy with the weight of the past. The emperor's desperate cover-up worked for a time, but the truth has a way of rising to the surface. The broken bones of Mary Vetsera and the mangled hands of Prince Rudolf tell a story of a struggle for life, not a walk into death. They were victims of a system that valued the survival of the crown over the life of the person wearing it. Merling remains a monument to the cold reality of absolute power, a place where the truth was murdered alongside a prince, and where the echoes of that final night still warn us that in the world of empires there is no such thing as a simple tragedy.